What's up, and welcome to the Football House presented by House Enterprise, our college football pick'em show. And it is the finale, the finish, the championship game. And TCU did not cover 13 points. Let us all down, let the country down. The hypno-toad, the horned frog let us down. It was a sad day. It was a bad day. But Stenson Bennett, he had his Heisman performance, 6 touchdowns. Completely went off, and college football is officially over. It's Will Tondo. We got Sam Basil and Gracie Marks here. Well, what a season it was. What it's been. It was always the dogs. And how's it going?
Oh, great. I mean, look, you know what? This is not, the closest game that we've seen. And it sucks that a margin like this has happened in the national championship. But again, I mean, Georgia, there was no doubt about it, for probably the entire second half of the season. As soon as they took down Tennessee, in October or November, whenever that was, I mean, I feel like a lot of us kind of knew that this was where we were headed. But they kind of, they needed to put the icing on the cake. They needed to cap it off with a win in the national championship, and incredibly well deserved. And look, I want to get this out there right now. TCU deserved to be there in the same way that Cincinnati deserved to get their asses kicked in the semifinals. TCU earned their right to get their asses kicked in the national championship game against Georgia. People talk about all the teams that could have made the playoffs this year, and if you put, there are a couple teams that maybe if you put them on the field that might have missed the playoffs this year, put them on the field against TCU, maybe 2 times out of 5, 4 times out of 10, they could have taken down the Horned Frogs. But that's not what mattered. TCU was there. They made it all the way. They earned their right through an entire season of play, through a really good Big 12 to get there. And look, it didn't go their way. They were simply out-coached. I mean, it's really hard to narrow down any specific spot where the Horned Frogs fell. Look, it was everywhere. They were just out-coached by an elite program, an elite head coach. And, let's be honest, an elite college football quarterback, he threw a touchdown tonight for one touchdown for every year he spent playing college football. But, again, he earned it. He's there. He's the 2-time national champ, and there's nothing you can do to, say otherwise. So, in my opinion, a great season, one of the best that we've seen in a very long time. And I couldn't be more excited for draft talk and even getting into what's going on in fall 2023.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's funny because I think I spent a lot of time convincing myself that maybe something else was going to happen. Like maybe we were going to get a different outcome. Maybe another team was going to win. And then about 2 weeks ago, I was like, yeah, it's going to be Georgia again. And yeah, so it's it's tough. It's always a little bit of a bummer to me when the game is a blowout, and this is another level of blowout. This is past the clowning. This is past the shit pumping. This is another level. They need to make just this game its own category. But it's I'm kind of neutral with Georgia. I'm not upset. I'm sad TCU didn't cover, but this guy's 26 years old, 25 years old. So I'll let him have his moment, but it's, I was just watching the game downstairs and I was talking to my brother. I was like, could you imagine being 25 years old, still in college? It's definitely a wild thing, and, happy for him, whatever. But again, I'm just kind of neutral on this overall.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things where it was cool that TCU made it and upset Michigan, because I think Michigan was, very cocky after they beat Ohio State, and that Georgia-Ohio State game was super close. So it's okay, this could have been a matchup. And after that, they already won their Super Bowl. They already won their national championship just being there. They were happy to be there. So, the question is, I'm curious, does Bennett get drafted in the top 4 rounds?
Top 4 rounds?
Yeah,
I would think so. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody who could use a backup like that. I mean, look, he played under a really good program, under a really good head coach. And obviously, there we see all the time guys in system quarterbacks in college not necessarily translate super well into the NFL. I mean, I think AJ McCarron is like a prime example of that, right? But I think I see a little bit more out of Stetson Bennett than I do out of AJ McCarron. Like the dude is a game manager. And I think that's something really important. It's a really good and a really great skill to have in the NFL. So I think tonight was actually really good for his draft stock. Aside from 6 touchdowns.
He is older than Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Tua, Justin Herbert, Mac Jones, Brock Purdy, Davis Mills, and Kenny Pickett.
And me.
And me too.
All of us.
It's just crazy because like I graduated college this year. I couldn't imagine doing like another 3 years of college, being that age. Like, I mean, some like TCU, they're like 19 years old. This guy's 25. Like that's a big age gap.
But he ain't doing college.
What I know, he's not doing class or anything, but like that's pretty crazy to have like 19-year-olds versus like a 25-year-old. Like that's like 12-year-old and 18-year-old. Like that's a big gap. So
big jump.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to see what he does if he does not get drafted. Like, what is he going to take? Just like the influencer route and do like a lot of brand deals and stuff. Like it will be interesting to see what happens if he doesn't get drafted. But I think he could go like late in the later rounds for sure.
I mean, he is definitely the NIL king. It's saying last year he earned $1 million.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow.
And like that's just last year. They still haven't like calculated all the stuff this year. So
right.
Again, 25, chilling in college, winning a natty, making $1 million.
Free rent.
Yeah, free rent. Not a bad gig. Not a bad gig at all.
It's wild for sure.
So that was our closing of 2022. And, we'll be dropping a blog very shortly. And we have our end of the season top 25 voted by the three of us plus Cole and Zimmer. So we have Georgia, TCU, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama at the 5, and then closing out. I mean, anyone have any commentary on, anybody in this position? I'm loving the 11, 12 Tulane USC down there. Utah in the top 10, but Basil, what do you got? Gracie, anybody?
Yeah, so this was actually a really, excuse me, as the person, who was, excuse me, as the person who was calculating this top 25, it was actually really interesting. And, voting myself, it was interesting seeing, how we kind of reconciled kind of the bottom half of the top 10. Because if you look at all these schools, I mean, look, really good schools had really good years, right? Like Kansas State, Utah, USC, Clemson, they all lost their bowl games. And while it's tough to, you obviously can't put them as low as like a South Carolina or even like an Oregon who won their bowl game but did not have a good season, as good a season as a team like USC. It was really tough coming out in the end. I mean, there was just so much stuff that was really challenging. But I think overall, a really good ranking. Texas and UCLA a little high in my opinion, but you know what? The polls always kind of sort themselves out, and I have to respect that. So I think in our first year of doing this, a really good start, and congrats to Georgia for winning, the first ever Football House national championship.
Yeah, I think one thing that really sticks out to me is like looking at the Pac-12. Like we talked about UCLA a lot, we talked about USC a lot, we talked about Oregon. And the team that's the highest is Washington, who we like barely talked about. And I mean, we talked about like Michael Penix a little bit, but like we didn't give them nearly as much attention as any of those other Pac-12 teams. And like they're the highest ranked team. And, Utah won the Pac-12 championship and Washington still ranked ahead of them. So like it's definitely crazy how we spent like the majority of the year, debating USC versus UCLA, and then like where does Oregon, and then Washington ended up on top, and Michael Penix had like a great season. So definitely a good year, I think, for the Pac-12. Just crazy that the kind of most irrelevant one made it out on top.
I mean, I think it kind of just goes to show you the resurgence, right, that we've seen in the Pac-12. I mean, so many teams kind of reemerged from the fold after being a little quiet in the 2010s. I would say that was not like the last decade was probably not the best for the Pac-12, and so many teams have found their way back into like serious national conversations that like again, it's on us for not for maybe missing some coverage of Washington, but again, there was just so many teams that put themselves in the fold that like we didn't even have time to get to the team that we ended up putting the highest out of all the Pac-12 teams in our top 25.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, there's a couple Big Ten teams ahead of them, but I feel like we didn't give enough love to Penn State this year, and they closed out at 7. Penn State was one, and then I mean, I don't really remember talking a lot about Florida State, and they're in the top 15 as well.
No, I had them in my top 25. Like in a couple weeks, they had obviously that really awesome win over LSU in week 1. But they kind of, I would say, had like a bit of an ebb and flow to them. And then their bowl win this year was just enough to kind of propel them into back into like a serious top 25 conversation. But if you want to move on to our way too early 2023 top 25, we did give them a bit more love. We put them at number 8, which I think is really interesting. They have a really, really strong recruiting class. According to 24/7 Sports, it's ranked 20th in the entire country. Obviously, the top 5 rounded out: Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Miami, Oklahoma. And so, obviously comparing the recruiting rankings to our own actual top 25 rankings, they don't directly correlate, but I think seeing what Florida has done this year and how they could possibly compound that with a really strong recruiting class in 2023 obviously shows us, at least at the Football House, that we're ready to put them back in the fold. I think it's high time that Clemson's dominance over the ACC, aside from Notre Dame's half membership, kind of brings the ACC back into the fold, just like the Pac-12, as a serious Power 5, set of schools. It's not just the Power 3; it's the Power 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think another thing with the Big Ten, like in Penn State, I think we spent a lot of time talking about Michigan, Ohio State. Once Penn State lost to whoever it was, even if it was Ohio State or Michigan, we kind of just like forgot about them. And like, I think as the weeks went on, we all kind of realized that it was coming down to Michigan, Ohio State, and like the buildup, was getting bigger and bigger each week. So shout out to Penn State, Rose Bowl champs. That's a big deal. They had a good season. They're like 50-year-old quarterback. What's his name? Sean Clifford went out on top. He had a great game. So like happy for them. And yeah, they definitely deserved a little more love. I think they just kind of got hidden in like the Big Ten, Michigan, Ohio State rivalry.
Yeah, speaking of old quarterbacks, I mean, looking at the Pac-12, Oregon, Bo Nix, I mean, he's only 23 next year, but I feel like his name has been thrown around for a decade, to be completely honest. Like I felt like the Auburn years were like 2015.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that too long ago.
And DJ is going to Oregon State next year, so that should be interesting. And I think it will be good for him. I think he stinks in my opinion, but Oregon State had like a solid year. They were definitely one of like the more fun, underrated teams in my opinion. So I think it will be good for them to get DJ, have some more like national spotlight next year.
So what do you way too early prediction? Will there be a Pac-12 team in the Final Four, or will Georgia go to a third straight championship?
Well, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I mean, it really just depends on like which conference like eats itself alive, right? Because I think that's something that we saw with the Pac-12. I mean, there was a lot of parity in that conference. I mean, Utah would beat USC, and then USC would take down UCLA. So like, it really prevented like a top dog from emerging. And if you're looking at our own, our own top 10, or if I can get extended to the top 11, I mean, you've got 3 out of the 5 teams in our way too early top 25 as SEC teams, and then Tennessee right behind them, sneaking up on them at number 11. So, and those teams all play, in similar divisions. They're always competing for spots in the SEC championship. So if USC or Oregon or even Washington can kind of hold strong throughout the season, maybe let one of those three teams emerge as like a clear favorite in the Pac-12 and really dominate while these three teams kind of kill each other en route to the SEC championship game, I think there's a serious shot that we'll see a Pac-12 team in the college football playoff.
Yeah. My way too early prediction probably is Bama's back next year in the Natty. That's what I would guess. I don't know if you guys saw during this game, but like during the halftime show, they were like, Georgia runs now college football, and like Nick Saban was like death staring the guy who said it during the halftime show. But yeah, that's my early prediction is that they will be back. I think like there's a pattern, or if they take a year off or something, they're like guaranteed back next year. So yeah, that's my way too early prediction is they'll be back.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens with Michigan. Obviously, a big letdown against TCU, but we don't know if Jim Harbaugh is back to the NFL or another season in the blue. What do you think? Gun to your head, because it's like Black Monday was kind of quiet this week or today rather. Obviously, Cliff Kingsbury got fired and Lovie Smith, and he was kind of tagged to the Broncos primarily. But I haven't really seen his name circulate that much today as I thought I would have.
I think it's tough. I mean, I'm also surprised that I didn't see his name come up as much as I thought it would. But the thing about the current NFL coaching carousel is that there are a lot of open spots, and a lot of those open spots are set up really well for a smart, talented, well-connected coach to really build something. Like there are a lot of teams with some young cores that maybe just did not have the right leadership kind of pushing them. And Jim Harbaugh, obviously, as we've seen, turned Michigan into, a Big Ten contending school every single year that he's been there. I think it's more likely than not that he takes the NFL job. Everyone's been saying like first offer he gets, he's taken. I don't know if he's going to be that eager. I don't know if it's like going to be the easiest decision ever, but I think a lot of the signs point to Jim Harbaugh back in the NFL, and it'll be big. It'll be a huge momentum swing for the Big Ten.
Yeah, I saw that Blake Corum is returning. One last dance. Is JJ McCarthy returning back to Michigan? Or I haven't seen anything about that. But if they're like planning to run it back or whatever, I don't think it's going to work personally. But yeah, it will be interesting. I hope he takes an NFL job. I just love when Michigan is just like in shambles. I love it. So I hope he does take the NFL job, and like I hope they have a horrible season next year. That would be really enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Ohio State will always be a key player, but I would love to see like a Rutgers or Purdue make some noise. Well, Purdue, Purdue has what's his name? Drew Brees is in the fold in the coaching mix. So maybe they'll have a nice gunslinger again.
They had a good season, then they got killed in their bowl game against LSU. That was bad.
And then will 2023 be the year that Texas is back? No. When does Archie?
I think not the next year or the year after.
The year after.
Yeah. Unless he's graduating this year, I'm not sure.
But I mean, we still got Ewers who, kind of got hurt and stuff. And then what's the deal with Hendon Hooker? Is he going to be back at Tennessee?
That I do not know.
I mean, he's probably hurt for a minute.
Yeah, I would be shocked if he came back to Tennessee.
A lot of stuff. I mean, we'll definitely have, another off-season show. We'll have our draft predictions and everything, and then get ready for the summer, just like that. But, any closing thoughts, Basil, Gracie, anything to closing words for the 2022-23 season?
Congrats to South Dakota State for winning the FCS championship. We didn't get to talk about, some of the later rounds of the FCS playoffs, but that was huge, taking down North Dakota State in Frisco. Other than that, I mean, no. I mean, what what else could you say about this season? You know what I mean? It's been excellent.
Yeah, for me, it's just hope USC fires their defensive coordinator. And do you want did you want to show the rankings, the final rankings?
For us?
Yeah, did we show them?
Did I or no?
Oh, we did not.
We did not. So yes, the final standings, the final rankings. We have Basil snuck in at the end. We were talking off air. That's why I was confused. It was a Gracie and myself show for the last couple weeks. We were separated by like 0.2%, and then Basil decided to have a 10-2 record over the last week. So he won by 56.56. I was 56.42, and Gracie was 56.18. So margins. But hey, I'll take it. Hey, the three winners right here, the three top of the food chain, over 50% in a college football season. You got to get you got to tip your hat to that, because that ain't easy.
It's tough.
Yeah, so, I mean, we were almost all above 50%, which is pretty crazy. That's pretty solid. Like if you look at the Barstool, they're horrible. They're like 40%. So like this is pretty solid.
Pretty solid. I mean, again, we were transparent. The picks were on the board every week. We were giving our analysis. We were talking shop. So you can't deny greatness there. But congrats to Basil. The trophy will come in the mail in one day.
Yep.
I'll get you a plaque going.
All right.
We'll get a plaque going.
And we got to get a plaque going for Coach Smart and his boys for winning the first House Enterprise Championship.
First house. We'll have to send them. We'll make them a T-shirt. We'll send it to them, and we'll start this tradition. So, yeah, that's been a hell of a season, hell of a show. It's been fun. This has been fun. No, I've actually enjoyed this, and I can't wait to get this going in the off season and next season. But thank you everyone for listening. Thank you to our house crew. Congrats again, and enjoy the off season. Take it easy.